Hello fellow blenders, this is Peter here with PM Designs. This video is kind of a follow-on from a couple of previous videos I made about a flat eye rig and how to get it to work. And somebody asked how to do it with image textures, or can it be done with image textures. So that's what this is. It's how to make a flat 2D eye using image textures. So let's just get straight into it. So I'm just going to start by adding I'm just going to do this with a circle for now. Tab into the top view, tab into edit mode, and just add a face there. One thing I will say now, which I'll talk about troubleshooting a bit later, is this works best. It does work otherwise, but it works best if your eye is completely flat. So I'll show you something later, but let's get on with this. So I've just made a basic eye. I'm going to make it oval so that we can, maybe it looks a bit more cartoony, but also we can address a problem that might arise later. So it's pretty easy. I'm going to just add my empty. If you've seen the other videos, you know how this goes. I'm going to add my empty here. I'm going to call it eye control.l, and I'm going to call this eye.l, left eye, whatever. New material, and I'm going to call that eye.l as well. Then I'm just going to add in my image texture. The first way I'm going to do this is the slightly more complicated way to show you how to deal with problems. And then there's another way which is easier, but it's using a different type of image texture. So I'm just going to get my image texture in here. Okay, so I've got my image texture in there and I've plugged it in there. I've just plugged it straight in, so it's not in the right place. So I just press Control and T to get my texture coordinate and mapping node up, and I'm going to connect that texture coordinate object into the vector of the mapping node, and I'm going to choose my eye control to be the object which controls it. So now I've got 4 eyes going on, so I need to come to my image texture node here, change it from repeat to clip. So the first thing we're going to say about this is that it is not, we can control the pupil and the iris, but it's not going to deal with this outer part. So that's why I wanted to do it this way, to show you that's not going to work. Okay, there is, as far as I know, this method is not going to be able to stretch this like veiny area to fit the rest of your eye. So I'm afraid that's just not going to happen. So first thing I'm going to do is just position my eye in the center, position my texture in the center, put it on the x-axis and the y-axis of 0.5, and I'm going to scale it down so it looks a bit more like that. These textures I've got are pretty rubbish, as you can see. I'm just going to bring down the specular so it's a bit more crisp. Okay, so it looks okay from here, yeah, but if I, move it like that, this whole thing's going to go off. So basically I just want the iris, yeah. So I'm going to mask off the rest of the area. So I'm going to add in a gradient texture, which I also need, I need the mapping node for that. So I'm just going to press Control and T and then borrow this texture coordinate up to my vector. Change this to spherical, delete this one, don't need that. Add in a color amp, which is going to be set to constant. I'm going to switch those over in a minute. And just for now, I'm going to plug this in so you can see what's going on. So this is making a mask, but I just need to flip it around. Like that. I don't need to actually, it just depends on what we're going to do next, but it's okay. Anyway, right, so now this is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to add in a mix node, mix RGB, sorry. I'm not using 3.6 or anything later than that because screencast keys doesn't work on that. And then all I'm going to do is use this gradient texture as the factor in the mix node. Plug this one back in. Okay. And now if I adjust this, you can see what that's doing. Yeah, so that's masking off all the other area. So I just want to get it to fit just snugly around the iris, and then my other color is going to be this white here. And that's that. Yeah, that works. So just to make sure that my eye control doesn't go flying off anywhere, I can just add a constraint, which is a shrink wrap constraint, and stick it on the eye. Okay, so now it can't go too far. So that's it. Then you just duplicate this collection, duplicate this lot, and move it over to the left slightly. Yeah, and then Shift and D, drop it there, GX -2, put that over there. And now for this one, I'm going to change the material, and duplicate the material, sorry, like that, and just change that to I.R, change this to I.R, and change the other control to control.R. And then just coming here, go to my object which is controlling it, and change it to control.R. So now I've got these two controls, and I can move my image texture, and you can scale them and rotate them. So if you wanted to just offset your eye image a little bit so it doesn't look exactly the same as the other one, you just do that. So that's it. If you did want to add any veins or anything around the edge, let's just hide that for now. So you would have to put that into color 2 down here. So I'm just going to do a very basic one. I'm not going to do it properly. I'm going to Control Shift and D this lot, because I still want that same texture coordinate, and I'm going to make this one like a sort of light pink, and this one into white. Set that on ease will probably do. Okay, and then I'm just going to pop that into the second color. Okay, so now I've got a pink edge. Yeah, and then if you wanted to go crazy and do some veins, you could do something like that. I just very quickly made that. It's not great, but I'm not going to go into that shader right now. That's the shader setup I've got here to make those, veins. And if I keep going, you can see it just gets redder. But yeah, I'm not going to go into that. But if you want to slow it down, and if you want to pause the video here and have a look, yeah, I've got, this is one set of veins. This is another set of sort of smaller veins. So let me just show you how that works. So we've got a gradient texture, which is to stop them coming to the center. And again, that's using the same object. And basically, they're created by a wave texture. Yeah, so the wave texture is affecting the vector of the gradient. And there's a noise texture affecting the vector of the wave texture. Then there's a radial then there's a radial gradient which makes the wave texture go around in a spiral like that. So if I just plug that in, you can see what that's doing there. Yeah, that's the radial texture there. Okay, and that goes in to a multiply, which is multiplied with the smaller set of veins, which is exactly the same setup, but I've just changed the size of the wave texture and adjusted the noise a little bit. And then up here is my eye, my iris with the gradient around it. Okay, so that's if you want to go crazy with veins. But just going back to this one now, I want to show you something which could, you might, if you did want to put this sort of pink edge around it, you might notice this problem. Let me just bring this out. So yeah, whoops, put that there. So the gradient is completely spherical, yet my eye is an oval. So all I have to do is just adjust the X scale of that to match the oval of my eye, and then it's the same shape as my eye, kind of, not my eye, this eye. So then put that back on ease, maybe a bit more white, and there you have it. You have like a pink area and a white area, and hopefully you have a better eye image texture than I do. That is the more difficult one, because you have to add this gradient to sort of cut out the rest of the texture image. But as long as you don't move it too far, it can be all right. One more thing we could do here, if you want to, but it doesn't really work that well, instead of setting the image texture node on clip, you can set it to extend. So that basically does what it says on the box. It extends the image texture, so you can move it over, but it doesn't do a great job of extending it. Yeah, and so you end up with that ugly mess. But yeah, that's why we have the gradient around the edge, to cut out the original texture. Right, moving on to the much easier method. Okay, so for this, I'm going to just duplicate this eye and call this I.L easy. Hide the rest. I'll duplicate this control and call this control L dot easy. Okay, so I'm going to get a new shader here and call this again I.L easy. All right, so for this one, this is when you've got an iris which is a PNG. So let me get my image texture ready, image texture node. And again, I need the same texture coordinate mapping node object, and I'm going to use my I control L easy as the object. So I'll just get my PNG. Okay, so this is a PNG, but it will come up as black. So same thing again, just set this to clip, and I'm going to offset it again so it's back in the center. So this is really easy. All I have to do is add in a mix node, mix RGB. Okay, I'm going to plug the color into the second, I'm going to plug the iris into the second one here and plug the alpha into the factor. Bang, there we go, easy. Set that to white, bright white, and you can adjust the scale of the eye here. Well, that's too small. Something like that. And again, we've got the same effect. But so that's how you do it with a PNG. Yeah, and I guess so. If you want to get more elaborate, or not more elaborate, but just a bit more fun, what I'm going to do is duplicate this setup. Plug this, add a mix shader. You don't have to do it this way, but this is just a suggestion for if you don't know how to animate change in between two shaders. So I'll bring this up to the second one for now. I'm going to add a heart shape. Yeah, so now I've got a heart. It's the same setup here. So I just plug that in there. This is just a heart image. Yeah, with PNG, with alpha. And so I just plug that into the second color here, plug alpha into the factor, plug the mix into here, and I've now got a heart eye which I can control, and I can control the scale of, so you could have it throbbing kind of thing like that or whatever. And yeah, just in case you didn't know this, so the reason I've done it this way is because I can now I can just switch between the two. You can't, it doesn't really blend well, but so but you could just have one singular eye with two different shapes, or three or four or whatever, just by switching the factor over here. And so that's that, pretty easy. Yeah, so you just have to remember that setup there, or if you've got the rest of the image which you want to get rid of, you need to add the spherical gradient. If you have something like this which has if you have a heart shape or a star shape or something, and you have other parts you want to get rid of, unfortunately there's no heart-shaped gradient, so you just have to take your image into Photoshop or GIMP or whatever, and just give it alpha yourself. Just delete everything that you don't want, and then just use the alpha as the factor into this one. Okay, so now talk about a bit of troubleshooting. I mentioned earlier that it must be completely flat. Let me show you why. So I've downloaded this head from, I think it's from Sketchfab, because I don't have any anime models. And from the front, it looks fine. Yeah, it looks great. But if I do it slowly, you might see some problems coming up. And that's because these eyes are not completely flat. I did actually have to separate these from the mesh because on the controls I'm using a shrink wrap, and if they were part of the mesh, then that wouldn't help me because the empty could go anywhere, all over the face. So I had to separate the eyes. But then, that's not a problem because you can just make sure they're parented well to the head. Yeah, let's have a close look at these eyes. First, you can see they are not flat. Yeah, so that causes one problem. And secondly, they're rotated at an angle. So there's not an easy way to adjust this in the shader. There's not an easy way to account for this in the shader. You're just going to have to oops, sorry. You're just going to have to figure it out. So as you can see, yeah, it doesn't work well when I'm moving the control. So you need to make sure your eyes are completely flat. Secondly, because the eye is not flush to any particular direction, I had to do a whole lot of messing around here to basically find my heart. Yeah, to put it in the middle. So let me show you what this looks like. If I put this all back to, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this one so I don't lose it, and duplicate this one so I can keep it as it was. So put it back to how things were before. We just got a clip, and this is all on 0, and this is all on 0. And yeah, I'll leave that as 10. So you just got to try and find it. You put your control there, and you got to try and figure out where it is. Yeah. So I've got my control there, and so what I had to do was basically just mess around trying to figure out where the eye was. So in the end, I just started doing things like this. Oh, I found it. Oh, I found some of it. Okay, and then oh, I found some more of it. Oh, and then I found some more of it. Oh, let's try rotating it that way. Oh, try rotating it that way. Oh, try rotating it that way. And eventually I ended up with this, yeah, until I got it into the center. So, you know, it's got something you can't apply. So it's because of the rotation and the location of my control, my eye control. If I apply that rotation, or the location is gonna mess up, but I want to keep my control at this size. Yeah, so if I apply that rotation and the location, yeah, it messes up because it's shrink wrapped. So I can't do that. So in the end, I just had to mess around until I found it. Okay, so I'm going to plug this guy back in here for a moment, show you the other problem. Okay, and again, it didn't work either, so what I did was change this from flat to box. And then for some reason, I don't know why, maybe you can tell me in the comments, it just worked like that. Okay, so instead of it being on flat, it's the box. I guess that, I don't know, sticks it in a certain area, and so then it worked. Yeah, and it seems to work like that. And then all I've done is done the same thing as I did in the previous video. I've made a master which controls both. Yeah, and then you could just parent that to your gaze, whatever it's called on your rig, which controls both your eyes' gaze where they're looking. So if you found that useful, please drop a like, because you know it helps to share it into the Blender community. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments, and thank you very much.